discussed science and the Bible is there is a contradiction. And we define science. Can we remember what are the two types of science? Anyone to answer? There are two types of science. Can we remember any of them? The first one is called operational science.
And historical science.
And historical science. The operational science is the science that we do in the laboratory and we repeat the experiment and we find the same results. There is no contradiction between the Bible and the operational science. The historical science speaks about things that happened in the past that we cannot repeat them in the present. Like creation, it happened in the past, we cannot repeat it in the laboratory. Evolution is something that needs millions of years, so we can't test that in the laboratory. So it all starts with the starting point. There is naturalistic starting point or atheist starting point, which assumes three things: that matter is everything and there is no God. And everything could be explained by time, chance, and laws of nature because there is no God. So give me millions of years, give me repeated mistakes, that is the mutation, and then the laws of nature acting on the matter. We discussed this in detail and we discovered this cannot really be a mechanism of creation. We have another starting point, which is called biblical starting point, which explains that God is outside time and he is the creator of the whole universe. And we find this is more logical because if we find something like the DNA, it's called desoxyribonucleic acid, which is the code of life, really. It is the code in the nucleus which gives us information about forming an arm, forming an ear, forming a heart. This system is so complicated and it needs a designer. It cannot happen by chance and time and laws of nature. And then we discussed Darwin's in detail, and we discussed the evolution, which depends in two pillars. One is the natural selection, and the other is mutation. And natural selection, we discovered it selects from what is available. It doesn't create. It is a distribution power. It is not a creative power. The mutation, meaning copying mistakes. So if you repeat the mistakes hundreds of times, you will not get something right at the end. So this is really mainly the essential points that we discussed. Any questions about these points? So I will repeat my question then after I summarized. What are the types of science? Number one, anyone, not Basim. What are the different types of science? Operational science and historical science.
And historical science.
Yeah, exactly. What is the difference between the two? Anybody can explain the operational science? These are the science that we do in the laboratory. Under the same conditions, we get the same results. So if we do the experiment in Montreal or in London or in Cairo, under the same condition, we get the same results. And this type of science gives us the computer and the Zoom program that we are using to communicate. There is no problem with that type of science and the Bible. The difference is the origin science or historical science. In the historical science, there are two starting points. One starting point saying there is no God, and matter is all what exists, and everything should be explained by chance, time, and laws of nature. That cannot explain life, really. There is another starting point, and this is the God created the heavens and earth. I told you this story about this chap who came to me a few years ago. We have a center here called Jam, Jesus and Me, a shop in the town center. So this person came to me and said, I know who you are. You are Nagy Iskander. I'm not going to shake hands with you because you believe in creation. I said, okay, if you don't believe in creation, you have to believe in the beginning there was nothing, and nothing had exploded and formed everything. This is not science. I have a better starting point. In the beginning, God created the heavens and earth. Beginning is the time. God is a source of energy and power. Heaven and earth is matter and space. So in the first verse in the Bible is much logical and much scientific than in the beginning there was nothing and nothing had exploded. Okay, are we all happy about all of this, brothers and sisters? I need to answer an answer actually.
Yes, we are okay with this.
Yes.
Yes. Okay, good. Right. As you see on the screen, we are fighting for the special creation of Adam. We didn't come from the apes. We didn't come from the monkeys. We didn't come from other creatures. We are created on the image of God. That's why when we disobeyed God, he made a plan of salvation. If Adam is symbolic, his son Seth will be symbolic, Noah will be symbolic, Abraham will be symbolic, David will be symbolic, and Jesus will be symbolic. But because Adam is real, and his son is real, and Noah is real, and Abraham is real, and David is real, the descendants of this family is real, and Jesus is real. As you can see on the screen, at the top, Jesus on the cross, and at the bottom, Adam and Eve. So Adam and Eve disobeyed God and ate from the tree of knowledge of good and evil. In first Adam, we all sinned. In last Adam, we will all be made alive if we accept him as our savior. So in order to destroy the last Adam, all what you need is to do is to destroy the first Adam. That means you have really stopped the whole thing, because if there is no Adam, there is no need for anything at all. So Jesus was born to die. I just want to show you this slide from Richard Dawkins. So Richard Dawkins said, of course, you know, Richard Dawkins is an atheist who doesn't believe in God, who goes all around the world to say God doesn't exist. He said, but of course, the story of Adam and Eve was only ever symbolic, wasn't it? He's asking really a rhetorical question, saying, really, it is symbolic? So Jesus has himself to be tortured and executed for a symbolic sin by non-existing individual? Nobody, not brought up in the faith, could reach any verdict other than this is barking mad. So this atheist is telling us if we don't believe in Adam and Eve, we are really mad. So we get the rebuke from an atheist telling us, Christians, if you don't believe in Adam and Eve, all your faith will collapse. All your faith will disappear. So that is why we are spending all this time talking about all these different theories to explain the importance of Adam and Eve and the human race, and we are descendants of the human race, and the human race had fallen. That's why we needed the Lord Jesus Christ. Are you all happy about that? Any questions till now?
Yes. I don't know
Yeah,
if
go ahead.
it's the right time to ask. Because I have a friend and we're discussing this that we have the spirit that it goes, when we die, it goes into somebody else and in incarnation. I know the Bible doesn't say anything about it, but is it the right time, or shall I wait until the end to ask my question?
No, ask now, yeah.
Okay,
no, there is no incarnation in the Bible. Yes, go ahead. What's the question?
Okay, so there's a theory that our spirits go into other, like when somebody dies, another spirit, somebody else gets gets born.
No, this is a unique spirit that goes back to God.
What's
It
the
doesn't
proof?
go
Where's the
to,
proof? Where's the
yeah,
proof?
what is the proof of the other idea? That's to start with. What is the proof it goes to another person? There is no proof of that.
Okay, so I can start by saying that. Prove me your point.
Of course, yeah. Get the person in the opposite view to prove his point.
Okay.
So your friend, when it says it goes to another person, what is our proof of that? She doesn't have a proof.
No.
We have the Bible who tells us we are unique. We are body, spirit, and soul. And when we die, we give our spirit to God, back again to God, and then our soul is judged later on.
So what's the difference between the soul and the spirit?
Yeah, that's a difficult area, but I'll let Bassem explain that to you. But I'd like to tell you something, that we are living because we have the Spirit of God. We have the life, if you like, okay? The soul is the inner being, who you are, and you are accountable before God by your soul. The body is the body as we all know it, okay? So we have, sometimes these words are interchangeable, but this is the simple way of understanding it. We are alive because there is a spirit of life in us, right?
Yes.
Then we are human beings. We have a soul that is our thoughts, our inner being, who we are, our decisions. This is coming from the soul, okay? And that's where we are accountable to God. Good. What else? Any more questions?
Can I add something, sir?
Yeah.
Regarding the reincarnation, Joyce, I know that our Chinese friends and Hindus friends, they always think about the incarnation. And they have this whole system which is called the samsara and the karma. And because of the karma, you will be reincarnated in another situation according to your deeds that you did in your past or previous life. And if you study their point of view, you will find that it has a lot of contradictions in itself. Because when you ask him about, for example, how can I suffer from the previous life of someone else? They don't have answer. Second issue, they said that if you have a bad karma, you can be born or reborn or reincarnated in a bad situation, like low social level, low economical level, or even you can be reincarnated in another realm, the animal realm, or an insect. But on the other side, if you have a good karma, you can be reincarnated in a higher situation, like good education, good health, good lifestyle, or even you can be reincarnated in the realm of angels. Now, if you are reincarnated in another realm other than the human realm, like you are reincarnated as as an animal or a bad spirit, evil spirit, or if you are reincarnated in a higher realm like the angels. Now here is a question. I asked them, so if I am a cat or a dog or an insect, how can I produce good deeds that will take me in the next life to a higher position? They said you cannot do it except if you are in the human realm. I said that, so this is not a logic, or this is not an acceptable system of belief, because you only put the reincarnation in effect only in the human realm. So how can you tell me that if I'm doing bad karma, I will be reborn or reincarnated in an insect or an animal? So they don't have answers. So, in fact, their system of belief is very contradictory, and it's not logic at all. On the other side, we in the Bible, we have it's clear that people have to live once and then they will die and they have the judgment. وضع للناس أن يموتوا مرة واحدة ثم بعد ذلك الدينونة. We have also the example that Jesus himself gave to us, the Lazarus and the rich man. What happened when both died? Okay, he explained everything. He explained even that when we will be in heaven, we are not gonna marry or remarry like the other things, but we will be like the angels of God. That means that we will not have marital relationships. Okay, so it's clear in the Bible and it's acceptable, other than the other systems like the Buddhist or the Hindus.
Yes, thanks, Basim. That's very clear. Right. Any other question, Joyce or Soha or Riyadh? Right. Okay. Right. Let us move on. I just want to tell you about these two important people, and we will continue that next week, God's willing. Charles Darwin, I chatted about that last week, a few lectures before. He was born in south of England in 1809, and his father sent him to study medicine in Edinburgh. But at the time, the anesthesia was not developed. So he saw very brutal sort of surgery, like amputation and other things. So he went back to his father and said, no, I'm not going to continue in medicine. So his father sent him to study theology because the job of a vicar or a priest was the most respected job in England at that time. So he studied theology, but he didn't really believe the Bible. And he was and then he went on the Beagle journey from England to South America. Took 5 years, and then he visited different islands there, and he found a bird called the finch, and he found that the beak of the finch is different from one island to another, depending on the type of food available. So he said the nature selects the creature that can live in this particular island. So that's called natural selection. But he was influenced by another very important person called Charles Lyell. Charles Lyell was a lawyer, but he was very interested in geology. And he said we should study geology as if the book of Moses was not written. He refused to accept the flood of Noah. He refused to accept anything except what he can see by his own eyes now. So that built something called uniformitarian. I'd like to explain this word. Uniformitarian means the same rate of change. So if the mountain is increasing 1 centimeter every year, and the height of the mountain is many, many kilometers, that means this mountain was formed over millions of years. So he looked at the earth and said, all the changes that we see nowadays are the same changes that happened in the past. And as a result, we have millions of years of history on the earth. So when Darwin went in his Beagle journey, he said, okay, if the history of humans is millions of years, and there are changes, small changes, small changes, small changes, that means we don't need God to create. We need just chemical reaction to start life, and life will modify itself to take the different shapes of life over millions of years. So that's the difference between the uniformitarian, الوتيرة الواحدة بالعربي, what we believe in catastrophic geology, the big catastrophe of Noah's flood, which divided the crust of the earth. Let me just explain that in this picture. These are the 3-4 slides that we use today. This is the map of the world. You see Europe here, and you see Africa here in the Middle East. You see Asia and Russia. You see Australia. You see North America, and you are probably about this area here in Canada. And you see South America, right? So this is the map of the Earth as we know it. And obviously there is water in between these continents, yes? Actually, in the beginning, it wasn't like that. It was all collected together in something called Pangea. And this is Africa, this is America, North and South, this is Europe, this is Asia, this is part of Asia, and this is the lower part which formed the Australia and New Zealand and the two poles, the North and South poles. So the geologists, even the non-Christians, believe all the continents were coming together, right? And this is called Pangea. And then they said they were separated just very, very slowly. That's the uniformitarian. What we believe in the Noah's flood, they were divided catastrophically quickly, and then they are moving slowly now. This called the tectonic plates. Tectonic plates is the structure of the earth, okay? So the tectonic plates are moving from each other all the time. As we're speaking now, these tectonic plates are still moving. We are moving about 2.5 centimeters every year. So we don't feel it, okay? So they believe in the uniformitarian or the al-watira al-wahida, that all these continents were separated just gradually. So if the distance between America and Europe, say 5,000 miles, and we are moving 1 inch every year, that means it takes millions of years to separate Europe from North America. You see the point? And that's how they came to understanding of millions of years. But we believe in the catastrophe during Noah's flood, which lasted for 371 days. It divided the crust of the earth very quickly, and then we are moving slowly nowadays. But they refused Noah's flood and refused the record in the Bible completely. They said that never happened. And as a result, they came to a different conclusion, that the age of the earth is millions and millions of years. And if there are millions of years, and there are biological changes which are small, that means we don't need a creator, we can count from chemical reactions. You remember when the tsunami happened in Southeast Asia, there are islands which moved within hours. So the movement of these tectonic plates does not depend on time, it depends on the power that can divide these tectonic plates. And we believe that the flood of Noah divided these continents rapidly, and then we are moving slowly. That's how the idea of millions of years came into existence. Are we clear about this idea? Any questions?
Yes, okay, but I have a question about how do they measure the age now of the earth or of any other?
Yes, there are two types of rocks. There are different types, but there are more. There are mainly two types. Something called sedimentary rocks, which is sediment one layer after the other. And the other type is called igneous rocks. Igneous rocks are lava coming out from volcanic eruption. And this lava will be fluid at the beginning. And when it is very solid, that's fully crystallized, that's the age of the rock. So they measure the age of the rock, of the igneous rocks, by the radiometric dating. You heard obviously of carbon-14. Carbon-14 cannot measure igneous rocks because there is no carbon in the igneous rocks اللي جاية من الحمم دي. So, and carbon-14 measures up to 100,000 years, not millions of years. Okay. Now, they measure it by another thing called potassium argon and uranium lead. You don't need to worry about all of that. But these measurements are based on assumption of something called the mother amount and the daughter amount, with something called the half-life. I'll give you an example just to tell you how these measures are not accurate because it's based on assumptions. There is a mount called Mount St. Helens in Washington area in the States. This mount erupted in May 1980, and it formed this lava, and this lava in 12 years became a mountain. So they took sample of this mountain, sent it to the laboratory, and said, please measure how old is this rock. So they came back and said it is 350,000 years to 2.8 million years. And this rock was formed within 12 years. You see there, Riyadh, the problem is the assumption. They assume something and it is not there. Of course, that needs a full lecture really to explain that and show you a couple of DVDs to explain that. So they are basing all their calculation on the uniformitarian idea, and everything is constant. But we believe things change during the flood. Is that gives an answer, Riyadh?
Yes.
Riyadh,
Yes,
can you hear me?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, thanks. Right. Any more questions? Because we need to understand the important point, actually. Give you an example about how their calculation is not accurate. This rock is sedimentary rock, okay? And it is in Grand Canyon, and I visited this area. Actually, I had they gave me a scholarship, and I went for a week and studied all of that. So this type here, called Hermit Formation, you don't need to worry about the details, but there is a different type here, as you can see. See that? And there is another layer, which is completely different, called Coconino Sandstone. All right? So they said there is 5 to 10 million years gap between the two layers. According to their estimate, there is 5 to 10 million years gap between this layer at the top and this layer at the bottom. Imagine if there is 5 to 10 million years, that means this surface between the two will have different shape because it is exposed for a long time. So that means there will be plants, and there will be areas which is raised and areas which is reduced. But when you look at it, it is a straight line like this. That means they were deposited very quickly above each other. And there is no gap of 5 to 10 million years gap. So all the geological column is based on assumptions, not an actual measurements. We trust the laboratories. We are not saying that the laboratory is wrong. What we are saying is the calculation is wrong. The assumption is wrong. That's why they come to these very different figures. Is this example clear, or you want me to explain it again?
I have a question. So what's the difference? Why are they different? The hermit is different from the other. What happened?
Yeah. The particles are different. So when the flood happened, imagine there is a lot of mountains which are dissolved in water. So with the speed of water, they are deposited in another place. And when they are deposited, they depend on the size of the particles. Let me explain to you. If you have زلط، عارفة يعني إيه زلط؟ ورملة؟
No.
عارفة يعني إيه رملة وزلط؟ Yeah?
Nah.
No, pebbles, big pebbles, and
Okay.
small pebbles and particles, of sediments, which is running under severe water stream. They are deposited depending on their body weight. So some particles are deposited in the bottom, and other different type of particles are deposited in the top. And if it happens quickly, you find the interface, the surface between the two, is smooth like this. But if it is exposed for millions of years, you'll find lots of changes. Like when you have a piece of land and it is not built, you find there are lots of herbs and things that developing in the area. You find that there are animals coming and there are changes on the surface of this field. But in this area, you find that the line between the different two is a straight line like this. Is that clear, Joyce?
Okay, so if I understand, the hermit was from the flood, and the other, the coconino, was man-made. Somebody built it.
No, it's not man-made. It's all from the flood, but the components of the flood are different types. So the particles which are similar to each other with the same size are deposited in the bottom. The ones which are bigger deposited in a higher level.
Oh, so it's all at the.
Okay.
So if I understand well, all this happened at the same time.
Exactly. But the geologists that they don't believe the flood, they say this is a layer and this is a different layer, and there is 5 to 10 million years gap in between the two.
Okay, now it's clearer.
Okay, you got that. Fine. Any other questions? So next time we'll talk different shapes, why we have different nose, why we have different color of the skin, why we have different teeth, why we have different colors of the eye, why we have different color of our skin. So that will be our next topic. Okay, I'd like you really to go back on the previous lectures that Bassem gave and I gave and listen to them again and spend some time thinking about it. And if you have any question, write these questions on a piece of paper. So when we meet again, we'll have enough time to discuss all of that.